What's up, beautiful people? This is Caden with Urban Finance. Today we're going to be doing a review of The Autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley. And before we jump into that, make sure you smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little on May 19, 1925 in Omaha, Nebraska, to a Grenada-born Louise Helen Little and Georgia-born Earl Little. He was the fourth of 7 children. His father was murdered when he was just a child by the Black Legionnaires, a Ku Klux Klan type organization. His father was viewed as an uppity, Nigger, by many white people because he wanted to own his own store. This desire by his father to be more in life than what white people in that town thought he should be is what most likely got him killed. He was a preacher with a gun and wasn't scared to shoot back at white folks that threatened his family. He was also a local leader in Garvey's UNIA, which all added to why white people wanted him dead. Malcolm watched as the white police officers and firefighters watched as their house burned down by a fire caused by white people in the town. He also had to look on as a life insurance company cheated his mother by ruling his father's death as a suicide so they wouldn't have to pay out on the policy. After this, white social workers sowed division into his family by telling them that his mother was crazy during their visits because she wouldn't allow her children to eat pork due to her religious practice. And eventually they placed him and several of his siblings in foster care. Malcolm saw firsthand how the white system divides and destroys black families, then blames them for their lot in life. We can see from the very beginning why Malcolm wasn't a fan of the current system. Malcolm learned as a child that crying out in protest accomplishes things. He recounts when his older brother and sister would ask for a butter biscuit or something else, their mother would tell them no. But he would cry out and make a fuss. Eventually, he would get what he wanted. His mother would always tell him, "Why can't you be like your older brother?" But he wondered, why would I be like my older brother when he never got what he desired by staying quiet? So early in life, he learned, if you want something, you had better make some noise. Black people had a lot of love and respect for Malcolm. Their affection for Malcolm was inspired by the fact that although he had become a national figure, he was still a man of the people, who they felt would never betray them. Black people have suffered long from betrayal, and in Malcolm they sensed a man of mission, one who would not betray them. They knew his origins, with which they could identify. They knew his criminal and prison record, which he had never concealed. He was a man who had come from the lower depths which they still inhabited. He had triumphed over his own criminality and his own ignorance to become a forceful leader and a spokesperson for black people, an uncompromising champion for his people. It was Malcolm's intention to raise Negro militancy to a new high point, with the main thrust aimed at both the southern and northern white supremacists. He learned very early from gambling as a child. If you see someone winning all the time, he isn't gambling, he's cheating. This was true of the older white boy who cheated him out of his dollar as a child, and this was true to what white America was doing to black people all across the nation. They weren't gambling, they aren't just winning, they're cheating at the game. Black education, white teachers. Malcolm Little was at the top of his white school. While the white teachers and students were clearly racist, he often didn't think much about it because the racist system programmed him not to think much about it. One of the moments that broke him down was when a white teacher who he really liked asked him what he wanted to be. He told him that he wanted to be a lawyer, and the teacher told him that he had needed to be realistic. "Why would you think you could become a lawyer?" he remarked. He also noted that this same teacher never discouraged any of the white students who wanted to head into a higher profession, and these students often didn't perform half as good as he did in school. From a very early age, white teachers would instill within their black students that they can only do the things that white people didn't want to do. He said, "Mine was the same psychology that makes Negroes even today. Though it bothers them down inside, keep letting the white man tell them how much progress they are making. They've heard it so much that they've almost gotten brainwashed into believing it, or at least accepting it. And I wish I could say this no longer existed today in 2020, but that's sadly not the case." Malcolm's prison education allowed him to reevaluate the forms of racism that he experienced early in his life. Before his time in prison, he responds to individual encounters of prejudice as separate instances of personal attack. His new, more fully developed perspective on race relation led him to see them as a part of a single problem. Nationally and internationally, white people have mistreated black people from slavery and throughout various forms of segregation. And Western society have historically used and abused non-whites. Malcolm now says all forms of racism that he experienced as a child, white society murder of his father, breaking up his family, treating him as inhuman, and discouraging him from accomplishing his goals, these weren't just personal attacks on him as an individual. This was a systemic attack on his race. What was once unclear to him became very clear. This changing attitude towards his view on racism influenced his later anti-white rhetoric and militant black separatism. Malcolm recalled his times on the streets of Harlem and the people he met. He observed that if not for the racist system that was keeping black people back, if not for racism, they could have thrived in the larger society. Faced with this political reality, those who frequent these nightclubs must concern themselves mainly with the basic matter of surviving the condition of the ghetto. Malcolm's hustlers' friends, such as Sammy the Pimp, business skills might have helped him build industries instead of a pimping empire. Similarly, West Indian Archie's photographic memory and quick math skills might have gotten him far in school instead of in gambling rackets. But sadly, they are trapped in a life in the ghetto with little hope of escape. Black leadership. Mr. Muhammad, the leader of the Nation of Islam at the time, didn't want to fight against other black leaders, even though they were attacking his organization. Elijah Muhammad understood one of the white man's tricks was keeping the black race divided and fighting against each other. Mr. Muhammad said that this had traditionally kept black people from achieving unity, which was the most important need of the black race in America. The black puppets continued ripping and tearing at Mr. Muhammad and the Nation of Islam until it began to appear as though they were afraid to speak against these important Negroes. That's when they succumbed to the pressure and started hurling their own attacks. The division of black people from slavery to this very day is the main reason that we are kept on the bottom of the social system. White allies. From his start to the very end, Malcolm kept growing and evolving as a person. A lot of this had to do with the trip around the world and the fact that he met white Muslim brothers who opened his eyes to the fact that all white people weren't devils, which was a common teaching of Elijah Muhammad. His first message to sincere white people was that they can do nothing to help the current predicament, but his new reform message was that their battle needed not to be among the black victims, but out on the battle lines of where America's racism really is. And that's in their own communities. America's racism is among their own fellow whites, and that's where they need to be. Unfortunately, Malcolm's new message wasn't as sensational for the media, so it never received the same coverage, and they continued to paint him in the previous light. Malcolm had experienced the invisible hand of white racism firsthand. He had been to what would be considered the depths of American society, poverty as a child, a life of crime, and finally prison. Through all this, he managed to claw his way to becoming the most famous black leader of his time. Every black boy and girl that reads this story experienced a sense of empowerment, knowing that no matter what your lot in life might be, you can become something special. There is no doubt that we as black people are dealt a bad hand, but that doesn't matter as much as finding our own mission in life. Once this is discovered, you could conquer all obstacles that stand in the way of your dreams. Alright family, this was a short review of the autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley. If you haven't already, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And like I always say, remember to live your best life.